I'll react to that, sure. I couldn't get my intro thing to work, so there's my intro. So we're reacting to a History Matters video. Why did France leave NATO? Check out History Matters, great channel. Might be my favorite channel on YouTube. Very short videos, but they make you want to learn more about the topic, and I think that's extremely important, especially like me with people like me with short attention spans. So let's go. Let's get into it. Why did France leave NATO? Go.
The Cold War is often seen as two united sides facing off in an ideological battle for the future. Yet, as many of you will have guessed, this wasn't always the case, and both sides had their own more rebellious members. In the case of the West, this was France, and their withdrawal from NATO in 1966 at the height of the Cold War is often discussed as an example of this. This course of action seems like it wouldn't have been a good idea at this point, and thus raises the question, why? Why did France withdraw from NATO? So, just to make it clear, despite what's often discussed, France didn't actually withdraw from NATO entirely, but from its unified command structure. It was still fully committed to defending other NATO from NATO entirely, but from its unified command structure. It was still fully committed to defending other NATO members in the case of war, and the command structure it had just left was created to lead and coordinate NATO's many militaries in the event of such a war. At its head was the Supreme Allied Commander, who could be from any of NATO's member states, so long as that member state began with a U and ended with United States of America. Second in command was the Deputy Allied Commander, who could also be from any NATO country, but in reality, just Britain. This upset French President Charles de Gaulle, who felt that it would be nice if a Frenchman could gain the position at least once. And so, in 1966, he withdrew French forces from NATO's unified command structure. This wasn't just done for the sake of pride, but because de Gaulle wanted to ensure French strategic independence. He and many in the military were concerned that France would become reliant on NATO for operational planning and thus would no longer be self-reliant. For France's budding nuclear arsenal, this meant zero collaboration in terms of joint nuclear strategy with Britain and America, and in terms of conventional operational planning, and thus would no longer be self-reliant. For France's budding nuclear arsenal, this meant zero collaboration in terms of joint nuclear strategy with Britain and America, and in terms of conventional forces, France's leadership wanted the French army to be
I did notice how France has quite a bit of nukes compared to obviously you have the US and the USSR or the US and Russia now. I think even Kazakhstan and like other Soviet states that right after what was it, 89 or 91 when the Soviet Union fell, and all of the former Soviet states like Kazakhstan, like right after that, they were one of the biggest nuclear powers. Technically, I think they gave them back to Russia, but because there were so many nukes in that former area that is now Kazakhstan, that former area in the Soviet Union. But I did notice France has a good amount too. Obviously, outside of Russia and U.S., they have like 80 or 90%. But the UK had quite a bit. China had quite a bit. Pakistan, India. Yeah, but France had quite a bit. I think they were like in fourth or maybe third.
Totally independent in terms of tactics, procurement, and policy. There were also concerns about placing French troops under the command of non-French leaders and how they would be used. This concern wasn't exactly new either, and was the reason that the French had withdrawn their navy from the unified command structure in the previous decade. This all culminated in a small diplomatic row with the USA. When leaving NATO's command structure, de Gaulle also ordered all foreign troops out of France. President Johnson saw this coming, and when de Gaulle made the formal request for all American troops to depart France, his government's response was, does that include those in the cemeteries as well? Furthermore, France also banned
Shit. Listen, France helped us out in the Revolutionary War, but I visited.
Government's
so
response
I
was,
assume he's trying to say, like, oh, you remember when thousands and thousands of Americans died trying to succeeding and taking what you failed to do, France, and which was to protect yourself against the Nazis. The Marginal Line stopped at the thing with France. I forget the mountains separating France and Spain, but that's a good border. And you have the Alps. Not that Italy or Spain are very hostile towards France in the past few hundred years, but at least 150. But the Marginal Line only kind of went along the German border with France, and I've been there. Me, my dad, and my brother. I said this in a different video too, but I remember that was the only time I was seriously afraid of, like, there. It just kind of hit me like, oh, what if there's like this landmine that hasn't gone off? Because we expected, like, oh, I want to go to the Maginot Line and see what it's like. We expected it to be kind of like a touristy place, but it's just so long that, like, they're just look like abandoned little concrete bunkers. And we kind of went up and over them, and there was a bunch of spikes and stuff and like cow fields, and I was just kind of creeped out, like, oh my god, like American tourists step on old World War II bomb and die or whatever. But yeah, France didn't uh protect the border with Belgium. Not that Belgium was going to be a threat, but that Germany would go through there, sending refugees and whatnot. They went through the Ardennes, which France didn't fortify. France seemed to be very still in the hubbub of winning World War I, and yeah, I guess this is kind of a, like, oh, you mean these ones too, France? Like, I'm not saying France doesn't. They have Napoleon, and they did help us in the war. They get a bad in Revolutionary War. They get a bad rap for being like, oh, I surrender kind of nation. But this little point here, I've been to these graves twice in my life. It's pretty crazy.
Include those in the cemeteries as well. Furthermore, France also banned the housing of American nuclear weapons on its soil. Importantly, these changes were incredibly popular with the French people, which is why no French leaders changed their arrangement for the rest of the century. Now, this
is that
move
Reagan
wasn't
and
first
Thatcher
move towards leaving NATO altogether for the rest of the century. Now, this move wasn't France's first move towards leaving NATO altogether. In fact, de Gaulle had signed a secret agreement with the United States promising that France would rejoin the unified command structure in the event of a Soviet invasion. And whilst many NATO members were completely outraged at the French move, the American response was one of resigned disagreement. In their eyes, NATO did not need France in it to survive, and the Johnson administration was convinced that it would only be 5 or 10 years until France rejoined, although they'd have to wait slightly longer than that. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thank you for watching, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet.
I was going to say that's Macron, but it says 2009, so that's not.
I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I did enjoy it. My favorite channel, I'm just going to say it because of how, and I think this is so important, they need to do this more, I think, in a lot of schools for people with severe ADD, ADHD, and OCD, and just plain laziness too, of just getting bunkered down into these subjects and going one by one and then going on to the next one. I think by giving an overall kind of summary of a time period can help you kind of get interested in certain things and then dive deeper into there, but who knows. So check out these. I'm going to put up some videos like always. Please hit that subscribe button. Smash the bell, ring the bell icon to see when my next video comes out. I'm at like 69 subscribers, almost 70. Thank you guys so much. Remember to leave comments down below what you'd like me to react to. I usually skip to Salmonella and History Matters. I'm trying to finish those out, and History Matters tends to get a lot of views. So and I love their channel, so keep reacting to those. But again, suggestions, comment, subscribe, like. Love you guys. See you next time.